What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and I know this is a little weird. I've not done any sort of Marvel or MCU related videos in quite a while. I've missed several shows, at least one movie that I know about, and now all of a sudden here I am talking about the most recent MCU property that just so happens to be a very popular and talked about and hyped up movie. Certainly feels like I'm chasing the clout, but to be fair, I mean, my channel is so small and there are so many bigger channels, so many reviews out there. If you're not subscribed to me and you're here, how did you even get here? I truly want to know, because there's no way the algorithm suggested my video. But on to the review itself. If you're here for a spoiler-free review, just know, I mean, it's a good movie. Go see it. That's kind of my quick spoiler-free thoughts. But there's a good chance if you're here, you clicked on this video, you're going to start getting videos now that are going to spoil the film for you. Just going to go ahead and say that. The algorithm kind of sucks. I watched 2 spoiler-free reviews after I watched the movie, thankfully, because all of a sudden I was getting videos that were showing me clips that were spoiler-filled. You know, just from the still alone, there was a spoiler right there. So the algorithm really sucks. So if you're here and you don't want any spoilers, just stay off social media and go see the film quickly, because if not, you're going to get spoiled on something. But to talk about the film with a bunch of spoilers, this is Deadpool and Wolverine. Very excited for this film going into it, because it's one that I wanted to see for a while. I mean, Deadpool 2, both movies that I really enjoyed. And coming into this, I was excited to see how they integrated it into the MCU. And I will say, as far as story goes, I thought that was very well handled. I think the inclusion of the TVA is a good building block for bringing Deadpool into it, because the TVA, kind of similar to Deadpool, there's that feeling of they're almost outside of everything. They're past the fourth wall too with him. Obviously, it's not on the same level that he is, but there is that sense that they're looking at the MCU and all of these fictional worlds from the outside. And so there's a fun connection there. And I think not having it be one of the TVA people we know, I think also adds a good element of, we don't know this guy, we don't know if we can trust him or not. It adds a fun element that I think really brings this whole film up, in my opinion, and it helps make it its own thing. And that's something else that I think they did really well, is making this film its own thing, even though they're now bringing Deadpool into the MCU, because it felt like while we still had all these cameos, the cameos from the MCU were very, very minimal. And they were not characters that are big names. I mean, Happy Hogan is probably the biggest MCU cameo that I remember seeing. So all of the cameos were really more focused on these other Marvel characters. And I think that really helped set this movie apart. And admittedly, I probably should have realized it sooner, but it helped elevate this film into less of another Deadpool and Wolverine movie and more of a love letter to the past Marvel films that were not a part of the MCU. It's something that it took me too long to realize, because when we first see Chris Evans as Johnny Storm, I just thought it was a funny little, because he played both of them, that's hilarious. But then whenever they brought in like Elektra, Blade, Gambit, even though he didn't actually have a movie, that's when I really started to realize, oh, wait a minute, this is paying homage to these films. And I think they did that part of it very well. I think it was welcome. It was something that made this movie more than just another comedy superhero film. And that to me, at least, helped so much, because as much as I like the first 2 Deadpool movies, I feel like there is something about that it does it loses its charm after a little bit. So if they had done the same thing on a 3rd film, I really do feel like I would not have enjoyed it quite as much as I did in the first 2. So having this extra element, and obviously throwing in Wolverine too, it helps build this world and build these characters so much more. So a couple of things that stood out to me in this film that I really enjoyed. First of all, Wolverine. Because how do you bring him back while still being respectful? Because the ending of Logan was so good. His story wrapped up perfectly there. Well, you don't bring him back. You bring back another version of him. It makes so much sense, and it is perfect. it's the perfect setup for this film. So really appreciated that they did that. And I think it's something that comic book movies have that works for them that not many people talk about, is this idea that they can bring in these characters that are the same technical person, but not the same person. When you really look at the character and how they act, how they talk, they can be two completely different people, even if they are the same character. Like, I remember when I was playing through Spider-Man 2, the Insomniac version, I remember I love that version of Venom. It's a completely different version of Venom that I've seen done before. It was not even Eddie Brock. And I remember I saw a couple of videos where people were complaining about it, saying that, oh, it's not the comic accurate Venom. But that's the thing. That's one of the things that I love about this idea of being so many different universes out there. You can have these different stories, and each one gives you something new and fresh. If everyone is exactly the same, well, you're going to be watching the same exact story over and over and over again. So I really appreciated how they handled it, and I really like this version of Wolverine because it does feel kind of like an underdog story, where he's come from a universe where he let everything go wrong. He didn't want to help. He didn't want to be involved, and he lost everything because of it. So it adds an extra layer to him. And honestly, I mean, Hugh Jackman killed so many of these scenes. I mean, there were several moments where I was just sat there kind of emotional because he had so much power behind what he was saying. The scene in the car where he was yelling at him right before they fought, great scene there. There's a moment, I think, whenever he was talking to X-23, I think is her name, or Laura is her new name. Just that moment with her was very well done, where he was explaining everything, and it was a little exposition-y, but it felt real. It felt very powerful. So yeah, so many great scenes, and showed what a great actor Hugh Jackman can be. And then on top of that, I mean, Deadpool, it's a good story for him. You know, it's not, I wouldn't say it's a perfect story or anything, but I think this is a good step to take for his character. When you bring in the TVA, when you bring in this idea that his universe is going to be gone, but he's about to get everything he wants by going to the MCU and being part of the Avengers and all of that, it's a nice conundrum for him to tackle, because he has to give up this stuff that he loves to get something else that he really wants. And obviously he's going to find an answer to be sort of both. But I still feel like it was interesting to see him wrestle with it, even though he's not the most serious character and he plays everything off as a joke most of the time. I feel like they did handle some of those moments with him very well, and in my opinion, made some interesting choices with him in that respect. So yeah, I think Ryan Reynolds once again delivers a great performance. I think all the characters do a really good job. It's really interesting. I've seen so many franchises bring back actors, bring back characters from the past and try to capitalize on the fan service. You know, you look at Star Wars did it, Jurassic Park did it, The Matrix did it. You've got all of these different franchises that tried to bring back these older versions of these characters, and none of them really worked. I didn't watch the Jurassic World sequel that had the three main people from the Jurassic Park movies. I didn't watch that one, but I didn't hear great things about it. Obviously, the Star Wars sequels did not do well. But the two movies that I've seen that have done this and done it well have been this one and Spider-Man No Way Home. So the MCU has found a way to bring back these actors and not just bring them back for fan service, but actually give a satisfying conclusion to some of their stories. And maybe some of that is because they didn't have great conclusions to begin with. You know, you look at the first two Spider-Men, they didn't have a final film. They were canceled, so they couldn't finish their stories. You look at some of the characters they brought into this, not all of them ended before they had a chance to really delve into their stories, but some of them did end on a bit of a sour note. So to bring them back, and I mean, bring in one character that didn't even get his own movie in Gambit, I mean, I think it's a fun way to not just make this a comedy movie with a bunch of fun cameos now that you're in the MCU, but actually pay homage to a lot of these movies that are now probably not going to be around anymore. Because, I mean, we're not going to see Wesley Snipes as Blade, more than likely. We're not going to see Jennifer Garner as Elektra again. We're probably never going to see Channing Tatum as Gambit. So I think it was a fun way to give us these characters and send them off with a bit of respect, with a fun, action-packed, enjoyable movie. So really appreciated how they handled it. And I think the cameos for me were probably the highlight of the film. And if you can get me to care about some of these characters, like I mean, I don't really care about Johnny Storm. I didn't really like Elektra in Daredevil, or I didn't watch her own movie. Blade, I mean, Blade's cool. I like Blade. But Gambit, I mean, I don't really have much of a reference for his character because I've not seen much of him. So if you can get me to care about these characters, the cameos, they did their jobs well. So kudos to the actors for bringing their A game, and also to the writing team for making these cameos feel important and meaningful to the story, because I think they did a good job with that. Now, on the topic of cameos, though, the one that I did want to discuss a little bit more, just because I have a bit of a theory going in my head, that is Laura. Now, why is she in the void? I did look up a couple of things and people were asking some questions. Why is she in the void if she's from Deadpool's universe? Because their universe is not technically dead yet. So why did she get put there? What did she do to get put there? So my running theory, because the idea of anchor beings is kind of doesn't make much sense, and maybe you're not supposed to think that much about it. Maybe the writers just wrote it off as kind of a this is why, this is the plot device we're going to use as to why Wolverine dying means that Deadpool's universe is going to end. But if you think about it, nobody's going to live forever. There's no one person that's going to live eternally. So anchor beings, that doesn't make sense, because once they are dead, that's it. You can't just continue on. So in my mind, anchor beings can be not necessarily replaced, but almost passed on. And I kind of wonder if X-23 Laura was supposed to be the next one, because she did have that personal connection to him. She did have that father-daughter relationship with him. So it would kind of make sense that almost his daughter-like person would be the next anchor being. So why was she in the void then, if she's supposed to be the anchor being? And I don't think this is going to be brought up. I don't think this is actually going to be talked about. But in my mind, it kind of makes sense that Paradox was trying to get some of these universes out of the way. He was trying to move them along and trying to implement his own style. I wouldn't be surprised if he put some of these anchor beings, or maybe future anchor beings, into the void so that these universes would start to die. And so he would be able to implement his new ideology of, I'm just going to, if I don't like this timeline, I'm going to get rid of it. I'm just going to use my device and be done with it. And the only way to do that is to make some of these universes on the verge of it. But I don't know. It's just something that I thought about, and I formed that theory. So if you guys have your own theories about why Laura was in there, let me know. But that was the one that came to mind for me, and I found it kind of interesting that maybe Paradox was even more evil than we saw in this film. Now let's talk about the villain of the story, because, I mean, to be perfectly honest, you need kind of a fun and epic villain for this epic team-up of Deadpool and Wolverine. And I think Cassandra Nova is a good, solid villain. I mean, she's more powerful than both of them, so they have to find clever ways to get around her mental powers. I like the story. I don't know if this is from the comics or not, but I like the idea of Charles having a twin in another universe that is just as powerful as him, but also evil. Something fun about that. She was appropriately creepy. I mean, her whole mind thing when she's like grabbing people through their faces was just absolutely disgusting. Anytime the eyes were involved were just, I kind of hated that. But everything about it was a lot of fun. Her motivations were a little weak. I get she's supposed to be kind of messed up and kind of evil, but it still felt like she was just happy to be where she was until all of a sudden she finds out this guy tried to kill her. And instead of trying to work against him, it's almost like she decided to take his plan and do it on a more global scale and just be like, nope, you know what, screw all of the timelines. I just want to live in the void and that be the only place to be. Kind of felt odd to me, but I don't know. Her motivations were not that big of a deal to me. It was more so I liked her powers. I think the performance was well done. and it was a good villain for, again, an epic showdown between Deadpool and Wolverine. So very well set up. But now let's talk about a couple of things that were not as good, unfortunately. First of all, I will say the CGI was a little rough at times. The opening scene I can forgive because it is an opening credit scene, so some of it does look very fake and kind of goofy, but that's kind of the point. You want to see all of these names being on the bones or seeing him pose as Ryan Reynolds pops up next. So it kind of made sense for it to look a little goofy. I will say, though, the one at the end with all of the Deadpools that they were going up against, I feel like the CGI there really, it looked a little iffy at times, and especially when they jumped out of the back of the bus. It was a slow-mo, and it looked kind of fine in slow-mo, but when they landed, it looked really fake, and the Wolverine in that scene looked really fake as well. So it was something that I was a little disappointed in, but it was a very small thing to be disappointed in a movie that was a lot of fun and enjoyable. So I'll take that one small little frustrating thing, the one small little issue that I have with CGI, if it means I get the rest of this really fun movie. The other thing that I was not as big of a fan of is Deadpool's friends on his own world. I did feel like they took kind of a backseat in a movie where it was all about trying to keep them alive and keep that universe alive. It kind of felt meaningless throughout most of it. I would have liked if they had maybe popped up to help at the end, just somewhat. And I mean, the fact that even they split up him and Vanessa for this movie, that didn't even feel like that big of a deal. We had a moment where she was talking about seeing this guy, and then we see how it happened whenever the memory thing was going on. But it didn't feel like that big of a deal of he lost her. Like it was such an emotional thing in the first two films, is getting her and trying to be with her. And all of a sudden now she just moved on and he's just whatever. I don't know. It did feel a little weird, but again, it's a small thing because the rest of it was really good, but I feel like it did take away from those scenes whenever he was with them or whenever he was talking about trying to save them. It did feel a little odd and a little out of place considering they were not really hardly involved in the film at all. But all in all, I think that about does it for my real review thoughts of it. Personally, I just wanted to throw in a couple of mentions as far as my favorite jokes of the film. First of all, I mean, the whole bit with Chris Evans as Johnny Storm, it's something that when he shows up, you're like, oh, hey, they got him in this. And then you start to think about it for a minute because they do let it build. They let the realization start to hit you as it's getting to that point. You hear the voice, you hear his voice, and you're thinking, Chris Evans? And then he lands, and you're thinking, okay, cool, I guess Captain America. And then you start to think about it, and you go, wait a minute, why would he be in the void? And then all of a sudden he says something about, like, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said dick. And you're just like, okay, no. Captain America doesn't swear. This isn't Captain America, is it? Chris Evans did play another Marvel character. Is that who this? And then sure enough, the build up to the joke of Deadpool saying he's going to say it. I'm thinking he's going to say flame on. He's going to say it. Avengers, flame on. I'm like, brilliant setup for a joke. It was great payoff. Great payoff. So that was probably one of my top ones. Also love just very quick joke, but something that I really appreciated because as much as I love these superhero movies, I'm also a sucker for musicals as well. So when they're fighting in the car and he slams, or Deadpool slams Wolverine onto the radio and The Greatest Show starts playing for just a second and then slams and switches. No notes, brilliant. Also, anything with the dog was great, but especially the scene where Wolverine grabbed him and just walked across and all the Deadpools stopped shooting because they're like, oh, no, cute puppy. I mean, as it should be, of course. And then the final one is, of course, nice pull with that one little moment. Oh, yes, I can lightly brush the fourth wall as well. The proposal. I don't know why, but it's one of those. Deadpool is very clearly very good at breaking the fourth wall and making it clever and making it sometimes subtle, sometimes blatant, but it's always set up in a very fun and clever way. So to just see him break the fourth wall by, I'm just going to say a movie that I was in. Again, no notes. Perfect joke. So there were obviously several, but those were the ones that definitely stood out to me as just really fun. Oh, one more that just popped into my head has to be the Wesley Snipes joke, because they did have several kind of more snide remarks, snide jokes at Marvel. Some, they made a joke about Hugh Jackman, who just got a divorce. They made a joke about Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck not being together. Oh, I'm so sorry. Daredevil's gone. Yeah, it's okay. Some great real life jokes there, but the one that killed me is, there's only one blade, and there will only ever be one blade. It's a great joke because, yeah, are we ever going to get a Blade movie? It doesn't seem like it. I read an article because I'm like, is there any updates? Apparently they did just fire another director or writer or something. It's something that I was not expecting for a Marvel film, for an MCU film to get added in and make jokes about the MCU that are not just, oh, haha, we can make fun of ourselves. No, this is like these are self-deprecating jokes about the MCU. And I love those. I love making jokes about myself that if anybody else said it would probably hurt my feelings. So that's why I'm going to say it, because I hurt my own feelings more than anybody else does. So, but yeah, all in all, it was a really fun movie. It was a great time. But let me know what you guys thought about it down in the comment section below. What were some of your favorite jokes? What were some of your favorite moments? What problems did you have with it? And also, what theories do you have about things going forward, such as the Thor scene? What do you think that's going to be about, especially now that this was probably written and filmed before they decided to switch to Doomsday? So what do you think? Let me know. We can talk about all that fun stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Marvel reviews, and I will see you guys whenever I get back to those. Till then, I hope you have a great day. I will talk to you all later. Peace out.